We know a tax will create deadweight loss, but the magnitude of the deadweight loss depends on elasticities. Let's use these examples to explain how elasticities affect deadweight loss. So, in the first example, we have breakfast cereal and sunscreen, and I'm going to draw the market for breakfast cereal and the market for sunscreen. Okay, here we have the sunscreen market. I will add the demand curve. In the breakfast cereal market, the demand is more elastic because there are many substitutes for cereal. We don't have to have cereal for breakfast. There are many alternatives. So that makes the demand for cereal elastic. So I'm going to draw that demand relatively flat. Here we have the elastic demand, and I will add the supply curve. Since I don't have any information about supply, I will just draw the regular supply. And I'll do the same thing for the sunscreen market. So what is the demand for sunscreen? Sunscreen is broadly defined. There are no perfect substitutes for sunscreen, and it's a necessity. And therefore, we can say the demand for sunscreen is inelastic. I will draw that steep. Here we have the inelastic demand. Let's add the regular supply. Again, we don't have information about supply, so I will just draw the regular supply. Now let's apply a dollar tax in both markets. In the cereal market, let's draw this tax, the distance between supply and demand. Let's say it's $1. So in the sunscreen market, I will draw the same distance between supply and demand. So let's make it this distance. They look about the same. It looks like the same tax, $8 tax. Now we need to find the deadweight loss in each market. Here in the cereal market, we have the deadweight loss here, and in the sunscreen market, the deadweight loss is here. Which one is larger? Of course, we can see that by looking at the pictures. Deadweight loss in the cereal market is larger, and in the sunscreen market, deadweight loss is smaller. So if the government wants to increase revenue with the least deadweight loss, with smaller deadweight loss, the government should tax the sunscreen market. Now let's use this example, hotel rooms in the short run and in the long run. We know in the short run we're limited. There are not many alternatives in the short run, but in the long run anything can happen, right? Any alternatives can be obtained. So I'm going to draw the two markets, hotel rooms in the short run in the first case, and the hotel rooms in the long run. And in the short run, again, we're limited to a number of rooms. It's not easy to increase the number of rooms. We cannot add a new building. We cannot add new rooms. So demand for hotel rooms in the short run will be inelastic. I'm going to add the supply curve. Okay, in the long run, we know that we can have many alternatives that makes the demand curve relatively elastic. I'm going to draw it flatter, and let's add the supply curve. Once again, let's assume that there is a tax in both markets. I'm going to draw, let's say, $100 tax on each side, and I will find the same distance here. Okay, so when we color the deadweight loss, we can see which one is larger. As you see here, the deadweight loss in the long run is larger, and in the short run, the deadweight loss is smaller. So the government can choose to tax the short run situation to create less deadweight loss. Now we have groceries and meals at fancy restaurants. I'm going to draw the two markets again. The first one is groceries. We have price and quantity on each side, and the other market is fancy restaurants. We have price and quantity. Groceries are necessities. We need to go to the groceries for our basic needs. So the demand for groceries will be inelastic. I'm going to draw the demand steep. That's inelastic demand. And I will add the supply curve as regular. In fancy restaurants, of course, demand is more elastic. Fancy restaurants are luxuries. They're not necessities. I'm going to draw the demand flatter. That's elastic demand. And let's add the supply curve. Now we're going to add a tax in both markets. So let's assume that here we have the tax on groceries. And I will find the same distance. It's about this distance in the fancy restaurant. It's the same tax we apply. And when we color this area, we can see which deadweight loss is larger. As we see here, the deadweight loss in the fancy restaurant market is larger, and the deadweight loss for groceries is smaller. So, which market should the government tax? Groceries or fancy restaurants? It looks like the deadweight loss is smaller for groceries, but who goes to the groceries? Those are the people, lower income people, those people with less resources. Should we really tax the groceries? When you look at the fancy restaurants, wealthier people go to the restaurants. If we look at the efficiency in both markets, it looks like taxing the groceries will have more efficiency. We're deviating from efficiency less when we tax groceries. But when we talk about equality, then the question is, should we really tax the groceries, or should we tax the wealthy people? So we're going back to our number one principle, economic principle. People face trade-offs, and the main trade-off is between efficiency and equality. In this case, as we see, more efficiency means less equality, and more equality means less efficiency. So we can ask this question: is the deadweight loss the only thing to consider when designing a tax system? The answer is no. We also consider equality when we design the tax system.